welcome to the Athletes for Arizona Mental Health panel. We are going to have some candid conversations about mental health in the community today. So I'll introduce myself and then allow my lovely panelists to introduce themselves as well. I'm Natasha Hastings. I am a two-time Olympic gold medalist with Team USA in track and field, and I am a mom, and also currently a EDS candidate in clinical mental health at the University of South Carolina. So I'll pass it on.
Hey, my name is Avi Story, former NBA player overseas, currently coaching in the WNBA, Arizona State alum. Just love AZ and just love the world around mental health and these conversations. I think is very important. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Hi, I'm Diego Marquez. I run track at the University of Arizona. So I'm still involved in athletics at Arizona, and mental health is a very important topic that I love to spread positive messages about. So I'm glad to be a part of this.
Awesome. Well, let's get the conversation going. We have some questions as prompts, but naturally, if the conversation goes anywhere, naturally, let's explore the topic. So, um, we'll start off with why does racial equity matter in mental health resources? Does anybody want to take the lead on that one?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. Why does it matter? Like just that question alone, like just I think it's triggering for me because it matters to everyone, like well-being, racial inequality, like being a black man, just being a minority. Uh, it's very important because topics like this concerns everyone has issues or things that they go through throughout their life, and to be able to be heard or even represented is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I think coming from my perspective, at the U of A, they tell us that it's very important that if any person of color or any race wants a therapist that is the same race as them, that they can find one for them. Because, like, for example, me, no matter how much studying I do, I'll never understand what it's like to be an African American. So I think it's important to acknowledge the perspective of other people, and sometimes a perspective that's similar is needed to fully understand and to help people through their problems.
Yeah. Diego, that to hear that is awesome because I will say that for me, joining my program was specifically for that reason. I had experience with sports psychologists and mental health professionals throughout my career, then saw how it helped my personal life, not just on the field. But then thinking about it, I was like, wait a minute, none of those doctors, therapists looked like me, and it speaks to having those representations to provide the help that we need. And I think even when we talk about our minority communities, even asking for help or acknowledging or recognizing that we might need help is a new thing. And I think providing that equity by providing providers that looks like us kind of facilitates the ability for us to feel like, hey, we can ask for help and the help can also look like us.
Yeah.
So did you want to add something else?
No, that's great. It just might not seem like a big deal to some people, but it's hard to understand if they just never like felt that feeling.
Right. If that's not your experience, like you said earlier, right?
And,
Yeah.
and I'm going to just add to that a little bit as well. Like it took some time for me to even feel comfortable enough to, you know, acknowledge within myself that I needed some support around something that I actually don't feel comfortable talking to someone about, or just in general. It's just, I
Mhm.
mean, it takes the time. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, it just takes time when you're ready. When you're ready, you know you're ready, and you'll be able to jump into something like that that can be very helpful. And just having the resources, having the people that identify and look like you makes that experience that much more easier to open up to someone with.
Yeah. I wonder if I'm curious because I often talk about as being athletes and being an NBA player. I feel like we look at athletes and feel like they're superheroes,
Yeah.
but we're all humans, right? So is that like a humanizing experience, or what does that make you feel like? Where I feel like a lot of times our Black experience and our athlete experience makes us appear that we have this armor, but internally we do have our own battles or struggles or things that we're dealing with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think about my time when I played, and Diego as well as Natasha, you can both um, understand and have this very similar experience. When you're practicing or in your field or on the court, nothing matters. Like everyone looks the same to you. Like we're competing, I'm trying to win, all these different things. And then when you leave that stage, you're back to being Diego, Natasha, and I'm Abi.
Mhm.
And the world that we live in, unfortunately, don't always accept us for who we are. They look at us as our skin color and not who we are as a person, or not. Again, I don't want you to know me as an athlete. I want you to know me. And that sometimes or always not not easy to be identified or even communicated to. So that has always been hard. Now completely removed from actually playing. Now I'm a coach. Like again, like just being in that world on the TV. Again, like just being removed from that, I'm back to being a black man.
Mhm.
Those experiences are not the same when you play. So that oftentimes I don't like it. I just don't like it. It's not okay. It's not okay at all. So I find myself always, I guess, speaking up to that
Mhm.
in different settings, and yeah, and I will continue to. So yeah, hope that answers it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Diego, you said something earlier about, you can really only speak to your experience. You don't know what it's like to be African American, but you can speak to what your experience is. But I wonder, have you thought about what cultural competence or humility in mental health means, what that means to you?
Hmm. Um, Cultural competence. I think that's pretty much what I was trying to say. Is
Mhm.
that being competent in terms of culture is being respectful and like acknowledging different perspectives. And also, I want to go back to something that Avi said is about how like being as an athlete, you kind of what I think is you're put on this pedestal because athletes are supposed to be strong, tough, hardworking, all these adjectives that are very positive.
Mhm.
And I think going to therapy, there's a stigma around it that is it means that you're weak if you go to therapy. And I think that that's completely false because therapy is a very healthy tool
Mhm.
and very helpful tool that can just help you be the best version of yourself. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, especially for athletes, that going to therapy is not weak.
It's
And
actually the quite opposite, right? It's
yeah,
actually very strong.
it actually it's very courageous if you go to therapy because it means you're willing to put yourself in an uncomfortable position to like better yourself.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, you can also think of it as you're training. You're training yourself. You're helping yourself. You're practicing on self. We train all the time. You guys all train. And what are you doing training? To get better at something, get better at a skill.
Hmm.
And mental health, seeing a therapist, you're getting better at self, working on yourself, how you want to show up for people, how you want to be to yourself, be kind to yourself, all those different things. So that definitely came to mind as you were speaking to that, Diego. And I mean, that's what I would hope all athletes or anyone that's seeing this think about that. Like you're working on yourself.
Mhm.
And that is hard.
Mhm.
But I mean, you got to give yourself a chance to
Right.
be great. And in order to be great is to work on self.
Absolutely. I have to third that. Because it is hard work and it is a courageous jump. And to your point, Avi, I always say, therapy is hard work. You have to face things that sometimes it's not comfortable facing, right? And you're facing hard truths. But what therapy does is give you the tools and the knowledge to work through those things. So it's a courageous step, number one, to say, hey, I need help, and to walk through those doors and get the help. And then you're building the skills for self and for life to show up for yourself and others how you want to show up. So it's still hard work. It's still rather courageous. It's not weak. It's not any of those things. So I have to third what both of you all um, say there. I'm going to talk a little bit about what cultural competence and humility means to me, because I do think that that is something that's incredibly important in terms of, number one, walking into the mental health space and getting help and, having practitioners that look like you, but it doesn't always work out that way. And I say that it's important to be curious, and I think especially in these spaces, Avi, you touched on something too. When we're out on the field, we're all just athletes. It's when we leave the space that we become others, or we're more cognizant of our differences. But sometimes we just have to not be afraid to ask the questions. I talk about, there's so much controversy going around Qatar right now, and the World Cup being in Qatar, and the human rights issues over there. And I've traveled to Qatar several times, and Qatar is one of my favorite places to be. And I remember having conversations on the plane, and I would say, if I'm asking too many questions, tell me to shut up. But I'm genuinely curious about your culture. And I think there's a way to have humility and to be curious about our differences. But in learning about our differences, we can also learn that there are also so many similarities as well. We're not as different as we, or there's something that we can connect on. Um, but we have to be willing to have those conversations, and sometimes take a step back, that the question might feel offensive, and maybe that's something for us to address within ourselves. But how else do we learn without being curious? So I'm just curious to hear how you guys feel about that in the mental health space. How do we bridge the gap in mental health in terms of bringing more um, Black and Indigenous people into the space of mental health? Don't
Yeah.
know.
The curious part, like you said it, um, I haven't heard anyone say that in a long time, or just in general, ask questions. Like I'm always asking questions about something that I just don't know. I mean, it could come off to someone as ignorant, or I mean, I don't think it is at all. I'm actually asking because I'm curious. I want to understand and learn something,
Mhm.
and channeling that into the mental health space for Indigenous and people of color. Again, like it's about being curious. It's about being open enough to wanting to know more about how you can be better. Why am I struggling with this? This has been consistent. Like I'm struggling with this. How do I overcome this? And then trying to find the resources to help you. You mentioned a little bit of trying to get in, or getting into the space of mental health, and trying to have someone that looks like you and feel comfortable talking to. That's not always the case. For example, I run into that all the time as I try to expose our athletes to different people around mental health, and for myself as well. So I think it's very important to give it a chance, and to really come in there as authentic as possible, and allow it to manifest into what it could be. And if it doesn't work, guess what? You could try again with someone else. Like
Mhm.
that is very important to understand for everyone that's listening to this. Like it's it doesn't just take one person. It might not just be one person. It might be a home run, and it might be your first person. But I think it's important to continue to try and give people a chance, and yourself really, to see what other people's input could be to be helpful for you.
Yeah. I liken it to dating. Might have to try kiss a couple of frogs before you find the right one.
That's true.
Facts.
For me, my answer is short and sweet about like cultural competence and cultural consciousness in general, is that I think it's the foundation of stopping insensitivity. I think with cultural consciousness, insensitivity would be gone because that's what causes it, kind of, or a lack of cultural consciousness causes it. And insensitivity can relate to mental health because like therapists, their job is to be sensitive
Mhm.
and understand what people are going through, and that also comes with this cultural consciousness which allows them to be sensitive.
That's a word. We need more of that in life. In you know.
Yep.
Yep.
That would take away a lot of problems in this
Yeah.
country.
Speak on it. Well, this next question is for you, Arizonans. Did I say that right? Is that how you is it
Yeah,
Arizonans,
yeah, that's
Arizonians?
right.
Okay. What does a lack of representation look like in Arizona for indigenous populations, Black populations, people of color?
Well, I can speak on indigenous populations. It's an issue that the U of A has been trying to um, improve upon because our university is positioned on indigenous land. So that's very interesting to think about because we took this land by force back in the day, or not me, but
Come on, give a history lesson now. Come on.
no, but so what they've been doing is they've been including messages at the end of their emails, or like teachers, I think, are required to talk about indigenous, or how it's indigenous land. The students that give tours, they have to mention the indigenous people and show respect to them, which I think is a step in the right direction.
Mhm.
Very, very cool that they're acknowledging the land that we're on, and very respectful. But sometimes to me it seems kind of forced, and I think there could be a better way about it, because it's sometimes it seems like they're just throwing it at the end of their email, or it's kind of just part of a script that they have to read when they're like introducing themselves or introducing the school. So I think that we're working on representation of the minorities, minority communities, and we're moving in the right direction. But there's definitely still ways to improve, ways to make it more meaningful, and yeah.
I love that. I actually had a professor here at the University of South Carolina that she put it on our syllabus. I'd never seen it before, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually pretty cool." That like she honored that like the building was on some land and who the land belonged to, and I was like, I'd never seen this before, so I had to research it, and I agree with you. It's a step in the right direction, and sometimes we got to take these small steps to get to, where we're finally headed. Avi, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm still processing that. Yeah, in order to make change, it has to be intentional. Period. Like intentional. So as things are on emails, or like you're saying, it seems like it's forced or rehearsed and things like that. I mean, that's awful, and I mean, in ways that could change, and how it could, that's conversation that will lead to that. But if you're consistently reminding people of things like that, it eventually come to fruition for them to actually be different and show different, or express or talk differently, or whatever it may be. I just think it needs to be even more. It needs to be intentional on how and what ways, um, lack of representation in Arizona needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Lack of it, you see it. Like there's segregated neighborhoods. There's neighborhoods that's all Hispanic. It's neighborhoods that's all black. It's all white. Like that needs to end. I mean, I'm probably not supposed to curse, and you probably edit it anyway. But fine, yo, it needs to end. Like it starts that basic. Like you know, as much as we are around, students and things like that, but when you go home, like that matters even more.
Mhm.
What those circles and what those relationships you have with people in your family and friends, like it has to start even there. It's really deep, and but I'm always looking to try to find ways to uh, have better relationships and speak to these things, because they're not easy conversations to have, but they need to be had.
Right.
It needs to be had. So back to the point of the lack of representation, what it looks like in Arizona. I mean, that's what it looks like. You have, I mean, this is going way off. You got your senator that's changing from Democrat to a independent now. Like, there's a lot of different things
While
that,
in office?
yes, yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's say again.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like it's just it's so many levels, and I know this is getting way off, but I don't know. It's really hard to like find the right way to express and talk about these things in
Mhm.
certain settings because you don't want to turn people off,
Right. Right.
but it's important to bring these things up.
Right.
And
Yeah, it seems like it's conversations that no one wants to have nowadays, but they're very important.
yeah,
Yeah. It's incredibly nuanced, and I don't want to overgeneralize because we're speaking to Arizona specifically, but I think that it's a tough place, right? Because we sit between the space of, we need to be more inclusive, we need to see more representation, but then deciphering between what's performative versus what's actually doing the work. And then there's just so much to do and so far to go. Where do we even begin? Um, I don't know. I feel like it's a hard question to answer because
Yeah,
there's
another
not just
issue.
one answer to that.
True. Another issue that's very similar, which I think is very interesting, and it's hard for me to form a strong opinion upon because it's it's the fact that schools, when or colleges in specifically, they want to be more inclusive,
Mhm.
so they try to hit like certain percentages within their population of students of race. But I think being inclusive means that these people were excluded in the first place. And it's interesting because I think it's a great cause that they want to have a diverse population and have like representation from each genre of human, but it just kind of there's just it seems that sometimes they just want to hit the number and so they look good. It's
Yeah.
interesting because it's a cause, but maybe the intentions aren't right sometimes.
Yeah. Again, a nuanced thing, right? Because there is the acknowledgement of we are excluded. So how do we become included? But yeah, to your point, how do we gauge or assess the intention? What's performative, what's truly genuine? It's I don't know that we'll ever know. It's a nuanced uh question. So the last question that we have here in the lineup for our listeners: if I am a BIPOC individual, how can I find resources for myself?
Mm.
Marlon, go first. Want me
Diego,
to go
go for it.
first?
Uh, I don't know. I need to think about this one.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in there then. I just how do you find these resources? And I thought about that a little bit, and like in order for to find a restaurant, or find a place to go get a drinks, anything like that is we have Yelp, all these different things. I think there's nothing that need to be created such as that. Like,
Mhm.
you know, um, finding a space for all people of color, creed, to feel comfortable enough to find like something online and make it that much easier for anyone to find something to get them closer to what they're trying to look for, in mental health resources.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, that could be great. That'd be a good start. But I mean, the internet is available to all of us, just right there on our phones. But if it's that important to you, I guess you will find it if you really put out the intention on trying to find something. I think you will find it.
I think that's a really cool idea that you just came up with. Some
Mhm.
sort of app where you put in like everything about you and it kind of matches you with the resources that would help. That sounds like groundbreaking.
Uh-oh. Sounds like you got an app idea that you might need to jump on before somebody listens to this and and
So
steals it.
I hear you, but to the audience, take it and run with it, because guess what?
Please.
I would love that. I would love to see something like that come in fruition. Like that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I have a 14-year-old daughter. Like to her, be able to get to a point where she can da 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 da, boom, it's right there for her. I love it. I mean, so
Yeah.
something out there created. I don't want nothing from it. I just want to see it.
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna say, like Avi said, these things here don't judge my busted up screen. But your smartphones. I literally, I just moved from Austin, Texas last year, and she's now my life coach. But I was seeing a therapist there, and I literally Googled Black female therapist in Austin, Texas. Like, that's what I did. A few people popped up, and I found her, and we dated for a little while, and now she can't break up with me. But also, use your resources. If you're on a college campus, I mean, the University of South Carolina is a PWI. Um, I'm very unapologetic. I'm interning in the athletic department, our mental health and performance department. I'm very outspoken and upfront with, hey, I'm here to fill the space for your Black student athletes here at this PWI. They come in and say that they want a Black practitioner. I'm encouraging athletes, students to go in and voice what it is that you need. So if you can't Google, you know, I mean, you can Google the services, but if you have services that are available to you that you can walk in and say, hey, I want these services, but I'd actually like to see someone who looks like me. Use your voice, use these things that are at our fingertips. There's so many services that are out there. There's a platform called Therapy for Black Girls. It's literally a directory of Black female therapists across the country. So there are things out there. I think we have to do our part in terms of how we get it out there to the masses, so that it is more accessible. Athletes for Hope. Athletes for Hope is providing, resources and psychoeducation for us to gain access to these resources. So there's a number of ways for us to figure out how to get the help that we need, but just use your voice. Just say, this is what I need. I'd like someone who looks like me. Google it. Walk into your guidance counselor. Is it guidance counselors anymore? I'm telling my age. Your school counselor's office.
No.
Go to your school counselor, and ask, and someone can point you in the right direction. I'm gonna stop there because now y'all know how old I am. Well, this was awesome. I enjoyed having this conversation with you guys. Avi and Diego, thank you for your time. Athletes for Arizona Mental Health